So good morning. Okay, so I'm going to talk today about the way in which I use social media. I'm not going to really tell anyone what they should do or what they shouldn't do, but I'm just going to talk about the kind of things that I do and kind of some of the stuff that's been really kind of beneficial in terms of my research. I thought I'd start off with this quote because I think that one of the big things when it comes to social media is that there's this kind of view that maybe you're either wasting your time, you're kind of messing around with something that you don't really need to if you're kind of like a serious academic, or really it's just like, you're kind of showing off. It's like you love yourself, and in the same way you want to tell everybody about what you had for breakfast, you also want to tell everybody about what you've been doing in terms of your day-to-day role. And so this is from Forbes, and it says here that, about this idea you're a serious academic. And I have to say, one of the biggest things that I encounter with my colleagues is that this idea that actually I'm doing something a little bit kind of like non-academic, something which doesn't really make me as good an academic as other people are. And so I think that, it's always, when we talk about social media, it's always going to be something which is quite subjective. I always think it's kind of along the lines of Marmite. You either love social media or you hate social media. And when it comes into a kind of academic space, that kind of like the Marmite effect becomes even bigger and bigger. But as it says there, it says, like right at the very end, it says, that if you're a serious academic, then you only think that sharing your research should be with other academics. Whereas like someone like myself, I kind of think that actually we should be sharing it much more widely in terms of that. And so in terms of what I do, I kind of like, because I think there's that distinction between the kind of personal and the kind of professional. One of the things that I do with social media is that I have, say, Facebook, where there's photos of my kids and my family and birthday parties and this sort of stuff. And then I have the kind of more professional side. So I use Twitter, I use WordPress, which is kind of where I kind of host my blog. And then I use YouTube as well. So I use YouTube for film, but also for just audio as well. And so one of the things that what I say with social media is that I'm not actually doing anything more. I'm still doing my research. I'm still, publishing peer-reviewed journal articles. I'm still going out and engaging and interviewing and meeting with people and going through all of those kind of processes that all of us do. But then on top of that, I'm just doing something a little bit more, which I think kind of gives that little kind of enhancement. So it's about kind of doing that little bit more to get a lot of benefit out of that. And so for me, it's about how do I maximize the potential impacts. So, I'll be honest, it's very nice getting in one of the top journals and, having that, that kind of prestige from colleagues. But what if that article just sits there and never ever gets read? What if maybe there's 4 or 5 other people in the field that I'm kind of working in who maybe read it, and then maybe 1 or 2 cite it in maybe 2, 3, 4 years time? What about then if I could actually do some research? It's actually open access, and then I share it, and a lot of people begin to engage, and it makes people think, and they kind of take that off into different directions. I still may get those 3 or 4 citations in 2 or 3 years' time. I still may have those same peers who are reading it, but actually what I'm doing is I'm trying to engage and start a much wider conversation. And so for me, it's about actually sort of, making my research public. I'm very much committed to this idea that actually research should be out there. I don't do research just for my colleagues or my peers. I do research which I think is kind of socially relevant. And some of the topics, in the introduction, he was talking about Islamophobia. When there's a terror attack, for example, and we've had a number this year, what we see is a spike in the number of Islamophobic attacks in the immediate aftermath. If I can actually bring some awareness, if I can kind of use my research to kind of inform the debate or kind of the landscape, then actually for me that's a good thing that I should be doing. So I can reach out to new audiences, I can engage different people, and I can also create networks. And so one of the things that happens is if there is an atrocity, and then the media can actually get through to me very quickly, because they can use social media, they can come through the normal university routes, but these sort of things, you create a different kind of network, so that can be with media, that can be with the journalists, that can be with community groups, any of those kind of things which are kind of you can see as being positive. And then it kind of builds your profile and your reputation as well. So I'm going to talk about reputation towards the end. But in terms of building your profile, I think it's actually good if somebody knows what your research is doing, if someone kind of understands where you kind of stand on the topic, then I think that's really useful in terms of that. And I think one of the big things for me is this idea of communities of goodwill. Where I share a lot of information, where I engage, where I actually do a lot of public engagement and civic engagement, one of the biggest benefits for me is this kind of idea of communities of goodwill. I get an awful lot of goodwill back. You know, I get a lot of my research kind of promoted, I get my stuff shared, I get recommended, I get sort of retweeted and so on. But there was a few years ago, and I remember that I got contacted by the BBC. And when I said, what, because it was quite bizarre, it was a very specialist thing that they asked me about, and they said, it was that the number of people had begun to send them emails and begun to tweet the BBC saying, you should speak to Chris Allen on this point. So this community of goodwill is something which I really value in terms of that. So I have a blog. This is my blog, and I think Mike touched upon in the next talk about a brand. Yes, I do have a kind of brand, so I kind of keep a lot of the kind of profile images and so on similar across those. I also use both my Twitter feed and my blog to kind of enhance to show the web address, so you can find me. And if you look across the top, you'll see that I've got a bit around academic articles, I've got stuff around kind of comment pieces, I've got stuff around podcasts and so on. So I'm the sort of academic that's going to be writing for the Huffington Post, writing for the Guardian, writing for the New Statesman, writing for the Conversation. Those sort of things I'm going to be doing. So I find this is one space where you can actually kind of find a way in actually engaging that. So if you look at slightly lower down, you can see that I wrote for the Political Quarterly blog. So what I did was I had an article published in the Political Quarterly, which was around national action, and in recent weeks we've just seen the British servicemen who have been arrested and charged for being members of that because the group's been banned. What happened was when this came back into the news, the Political Quarterly said to me, will you write a blog for that? So in that way I'm promoting my research, I'm actually engaging further, but also I'm sharing that a little bit more. So all of this is about my own research. At the root of this is the research that I'm doing. And then, so I share this, and then from that, that article, because of the fact that the Political Quarterly saw that I had a big following on social media, they then made that article free. So then I could tweet that out, and actually people would read not only the blog post, but then they could read the whole article as well. So my research suddenly become accessible to a much wider audience. And then what I do is I use Twitter to actually put that out there. So once I, so without getting into the kind of back work of something, when I post on my blog, it immediately gets tweeted out as well. And I'm not sure you can see there, but if you so I've just got if you look just on the right hand side, it says tweet activity. And on Friday last week, it says there was 2,445 impressions. So that's 2,445 people that have actually seen it. They may not react to it, but actually 2,445 people have actually kind of seen those tweets on that day. So if you think about it, if at the core of this is your research, and if you think about if you go to a conference, then maybe you're going to stand in front of maybe 100, 200 people at most and talk about your research. In one day, I can actually have the potential of around more than 2,000 people actually kind of, seeing my research or seeing something which is being posted, which is a link to my research. And one of the things I have done is I've been able to trace back that you can actually, if you post an article that's a journal article which is open access, you can then trace it back and you can see how many times that's been downloaded and so on the website as well. So it's absolutely crucial. It's a great way in which to share your research. And so it's something that I do as normal. It's something that I just add into this. It's very much about sort of, not creating a whole new kind of realm of work, but actually about doing something, a very small amount, which supplements the work that I'm doing already. And then also I put videos on. So earlier this year I took part in a debate in Denver, in Colorado, and part of that was around violent extremism. This was filmed by World Denver, and actually when I got hold of that, I was enabled to put that onto my website, and then that would tweet out as well. So one of the things that does is that a lot of people kind of like, when I talk about that community of goodwill, is that people kind of, and the kind of people that follow me, understand where I stand on debates. They kind of know what my position is.